Good evening and welcome to the Church of Christ Bridgeport Wednesday evening Bible study. Glad to have you with us. I pray that your day has been well with the Lord and God has taken care of you since the first hour that He woke you up this morning and started you out on your way. It is great to know that we have a God that is concerned about us, love us in the manner in which He does, gave His life on the cross for us, that we might have eternal life. And we are so thankful and we're blessed for that. We praise Him all the time, simply because He is God. And we love the things that He are out of His boundary of care. No matter where we are, God is there and we're thankful for that. Praise the Lord. Be turning your books. What do you think about the Christ by Brother Walker? Be turning to chapter 170, Jesus before Pilate. There'll be 4 gospel readings of this. We will continue in that thread, getting 4 different perspectives. And we kind of will probably do that right throughout, as I can see, for the exception of the last chapter. 4 gospel accounts of Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection. Okay, so on page 403, chapter 170, Jesus before Pilate. All right, there'd be a Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John account. Let's have a reader for Matthew 27, 1 and 2, and then skip down to 11 through 14. Matthew 27, 1 and 2, and skip down and read Matthew 11 through 14. Have a reader for that. Go ahead and raise your hand. Again, that will be Matthew 27, 1 and 2. And go down and read 11 through 14. All right, I'll start us off by reading that one. Can we have a Mark 15, 1 through 5? Sister Wong, will you be reading Matthew?
I can read Matthew.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, you have Matthew 27, 1 and 2, and then skip down to verses 11 through 14, please.
Okay, Matthew 27, 1 and 2. Give me 1 minute.
Okay. All right. Let's have a reader for Mark 15, 1 through 5. Mark 15, 1 through 5.
I'll read that.
Sister Stanley will read Mark 15, 1 through 5. Can we have a reader for Luke 23, 1 through 7? Luke 23, 1 through 7.
Cindy, did you say you wanted the Mark verse?
Go ahead, please.
Do we have a reader for Luke 23, 1 through 7?
I think it was Sister Cindy. She wanted to read one.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I was going to read Matthew 15, 1 through 5. Is that the Matthew one? Or is it Matthew?
That's Mark.
Or is it Mark? Oh, it's Mark 15, 1 through 5.
Yes.
And then I'll read the Luke 23, 1 through 7.
And then we have a final reading from John 18, 28 through 38.
I'll read.
Okay, thank you, brother. Okay, Sister Karen, can you start us off, please? Thank you.
Okay, you said Matthew 27, 1 to 2, and then 14 to what?
11 down to 14.
11 down to 14. Okay. Matthew 27, 1 to 2. When the morning was come, all the chief priests and elders of the people took counsel against Jesus to put him to death. And when they had bound him, they led him away and delivered him to Pontius Pilate, the governor. Verse 11. And Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, saying, Art thou the king of the Jews? And Jesus said unto him, Thou sayest. And when he was accused of the chief priests and elders, he answered nothing. Then said Pilate unto him, Hearest thou not how many things they witness against thee? And he answered him to never a word, insomuch that the governor marveled greatly.
Okay, thank you, sister. All right, second reading, please.
Okay, Mark 15, 1 through 5.
Thank
Very
you.
early in the morning, the chief priests with the elders, the teachers of the law, and the whole Sanhedrin made their plans. So they bound Jesus, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate. Are you the king of the Jews? Asked Pilate. You have said so, Jesus replied. The chief priests accused him of many things. So again, Pilate asked him, Aren't you going to answer? See how many things they are accusing you of. But Jesus still made no reply, and Pilate was amazed.
All right, sister, thank you. All right, Sister Stanley, Luke 23, 1 through 7.
Then the whole multitude of them arose and led him to Pilate, and they began to accuse him, saying, We found this fellow perverting the nation and forbidding to pay taxes to Caesar, saying that he himself is Christ, a king. Then Pilate asked him, saying, Are you the king of the Jews? He answered him and said, It is as you say. So Pilate said to the chief priests and the crowd, I find no fault with this man. But they were the more fierce, saying, He stirs up the people, teaching throughout all Judea, beginning from Galilee to this place. When Pilate heard of Galilee, he asked if the man were a Galilean. And as soon as he knew that he had belonged to Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who was also in Jerusalem at the time.
Okay, all right, Brother Stanley. Thank you, Sister Stanley. Brother Stanley. John 18, 28 through 38.
Then they led Jesus from Caiaphas to the praetorium, and it was early morning, but they themselves did not go into the praetorium, lest they should be defiled, but that they might eat the Passover. Pilate then went out to them and said, What accusations do you bring against this man? They answered and said to him, If he were not an evildoer, we will not have delivered him up to you. Then Pilate said, You take him and judge him according to your law. Therefore, the Jews said to him, It is not lawful for us to put anyone to death. That is the saying of Jesus might be fulfilled, which he spoke, signifying by what death he would die. Then Pilate entered the praetorium again, called Jesus, and said to him, Are you the king of the Jews? Jesus answered him, Are you speaking for yourself about this, or did others tell you this concerning me? Pilate answered, Am I a Jew? Your own nation and the chief priests have delivered you to me. What have you done? Jesus answered, My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants will fight so that I should not be delivered to the Jews. But my kingdom is not from here. Pilate therefore said to them, Are you a king then? Jesus answered, You say rightly that I am a king. For this cause I was born, and for this cause I have come into this world, that I should bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice. Pilate said to him, What is truth? And when he had said this, he went out again to the Jews and said to them, I find no fault in him at all.
Okay, this puts us now in front of Pilate. And the Jews themselves is trying to expedite this as quick as they can. They're under restrictions of some sort because of the holiday, and they cannot be defiled. They cannot be going into Gentile spaces and all this old stuff that restricts them by their law. And they have already sentenced Jesus to death, but they can't carry it out. So they have to come up with something. They have to, and it's unfortunate that Jesus had he had to go through this, but it has to be. I just, we just have to look at it that way. We have to do this. So Pilate goes through this whole governor thing. And if you read anything or studied anything about Pilate, the governor, and the Jews, they did not like one another. Pilate didn't like them by no means, and they didn't like him. It was just a relationship that had to be, and it was what it was. Okay. Pilate's a very smart man. If not, the Roman government wouldn't have put him in place in power. Caiaphas is no fool himself. He was a necessary evil for the Roman government, him and his father-in-law. And everything was going okay under the Roman occupation. I mean, Rome was very smart at occupying people's territory and stuff and allowing them to remain in power as long as Rome was the power source. And I always been amazed of how that actually went down in history, but they were probably at that time, they were the smartest conquering nation on the planet, and they did it well. They had a very extreme military force that was second to none. And Roman senators and the Roman government was extremely smart on how they conducted foreign business and foreign policy. Now we have the Son of God standing before him. And Pilate and Jesus, they have something to say. And the Sanhedrin, they have something to say. And as a Bible study student, we understand what's getting ready to go down. But if we can just keep it, if we can just strip it's hard. I know it's hard. If we can just strip what we have learned and just look at the audience and the turn of events. Brother Walker said, and I'm going to not read the gospel chapter and verses. I'm going to just read it through so you can see how Brother Walker has added this to the story for our thinking and our conversations with the questions. Okay. Sister Karen started us off, Brother Stanley ended us. So we got the 4 gospel accounts, Sister Cindy and Sister Donna. It says, after the Sanhedrin had sentenced Jesus to death, they bound him again. Then all the members of the Sanhedrin rose and led him off to Pilate. So there was a great procession. The Roman governor, that's who Pilate was. When he got to the governor's palace, they handed Jesus over to Pilate. The religious leaders, however, declined to go into the governor's palace. This was so that they would not become ceremonially unclean, and they could not, or otherwise they would have been able to eat the Passover meal that day. So they had to go through this whole ceremonial thing. They couldn't hinder themselves from doing that. So in defense to them, Pilate came outside and asked, "What charges are you bringing against this man?" They answered, if he were not an evildoer, we would not have handed him over to you. A little sarcasm. But that just goes to show you the tone, that they didn't like each other. They didn't want to go there, but they had to go there. They had to do what they're doing, not because they couldn't kill Jesus themselves. For that, Pilate concluded that the charge they were bringing against Jesus was not very significant, so he said to them, "Take him yourselves and judge him by your own law." Rightfully so. He's the governor, he knows the law, he knows offenses. This is something that's under his radar that he really don't care to spend a whole lot of time with. Plus, Jesus ain't talking, so He's not moving, he's not yelling and screaming, he's not defending himself, and he's not talking. So perception is very important in situations like this, but you judge it. But we have no right to execute anyone, the Jews complain. Okay, so death was on their mind, so that's clear. They made that clear to Pilate. The Apostle John wrote that this happened to fulfill Jesus' prophecy that he would die by execution. They're playing right into God's playbook. Then the religious leaders brought 3 charges that they thought Pilate would consider serious. They said, we found this man subverting our nation. He opposed payment of taxes to Caesar and claims to be Christ, the king. So they thought that was a shoe-in. That would at least get Pilate's attention to give them what they want. So Pilate asked Jesus, who stood before him, are you the king of the Jews? Now, this is not uncustomary for a Roman governor to do that with any of the accusers. And he would say that he would, if he couldn't figure things out by the way people brought people to him, he would question those people, those prisoners or people that, because to get both sides of the story. And at this particular scene, Jesus is not talking. And Pilate is probably looking at Jesus to see his body language is going to respond to this, if he's going to verbally say anything. That's why I say you have to put yourself in the circle of events that's going on right here so you can understand all the players. Jesus answered, yes, it is as you say. The chief priests also accused Jesus of many additional things, but Jesus made no reply to their charges. Finally, Pilate asked him, don't you hear the testimony that are bringing against you? Aren't you going to answer? See how many things they are accusing you of? Uncommon, not interrupting, not saying, I'm in there lying on me. None of that. He's just sitting there, he's looking at them. And he's letting them talk. Still, Jesus made no reply, and Pilate was amazed. Based on all the things they were saying, remember at the end of John, real last sentence, they can't put everything in the Bible. So there are some things that we have to refer to an inference that they are saying. There's a lot of things they're saying. And they're hoping that some of it would resonate with Pilate. But Jesus made no reply. Then Pilate went back into the palace and summoned Jesus to him and asked him again, are you the king of the Jews? Jesus responded by asking Pilate, is that your own idea, or did others talk to you about me? Now this gets more and more interesting, the way it's playing out. But Jesus is pulling Pilate into what needs to be done to him, because Pilate is not moved by any of this. So Pilate is becoming more and more intrigued with Jesus, not primarily about what they're saying, because they're always saying something. He's governed these people before. But really something's going on here. Those of us that have read and have studied, we know what his wife has said and stuff like that, but he's getting drawn into Jesus' turn of events and how Jesus wants this to play out. He has no choice. And it's working. Unfortunately, it's going to be a death sentence, but it's working. Am I a Jew? Pilate retorted. It was your people and your chief priests who handed you over to me. What is it you have done? Jesus replied, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would fight to prevent my being turned over to the Jews. But now my kingdom is not from here. Pilate retorted, you are a king then. Jesus replied, you are right in saying I am a king. To this I was born, and for this I came into the world, in order to testify to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice. Here comes the trap. Jesus strategically answer in this way because Pilate is thinking about what Jesus said, because that's one of the accusations the Jews are bringing against Jesus. Jesus is now making Pilate think, what is he talking about? What is he talking about? And Jesus is not playing into the charges that have been brought against him. He's talking about a subject where Pilate is thinking, what is this guy talking about? And now it's becoming more and more intriguing with Jesus standing there before him. And Jesus going to authoritative dissertation about my subjects will this and my subjects will that. Then Pilate answered, what is true? After that, Pilate went out again to the Jews and said, I find no guilt in him, because the 3 accusations that they made against Jesus and all the other things they're saying, it just didn't resonate with Pilate. And Jesus didn't help any, because Jesus didn't play into their building up of false information. He needed them to be what they were. He needed them to cast an execution judgment on him. And that's exactly what they did. Okay, so, look at it that way. And Brother Stanley will bring us to some of this next week. They get downright angry about what Pilate is not doing, because they want him to expedite this. They don't want to talk anymore. They don't want anybody to reason about Jesus. Okay? Still, they insist. He stirs up the people all over Judea by his teaching, starting in Galilee. He has come all the way here. And hearing that Jesus came from Galilee, Pilate asked if Jesus was a Galilean. When he learned that Jesus was from Galilee, he sent him to King Herod, and that's what we'll study next week. For Herod was in Jerusalem at the time of Galilee, was in Jerusalem at that time, and Galilee was under Herod's jurisdiction. So it was passed the buck. I don't really want to do anything to this man anyway, because it doesn't make any sense. When you're in power about some things and you have the ability to make a judgment call on whether someone is going to spend the rest of their life here or there, or they're going to lose their life, or they're going to have their life taken away from them, or you're just going to physically beat them down. There are times when silence is golden, and someone is brought before you, less you say, the better off things are for you, because you are judged. If you keep silent, people can't, it's like an answer not, a question not heard, you can't give an answer to. Okay, but people do that all the time. Well, he said this and he said that. That's not what he said. Jesus is making it clear what he's saying. Okay, and so Pilate is being intrigued by what he's saying and what he's not saying and what he's doing. And it makes the story more and more complex on Pilate's end. So Pilate said, I sent him to Herod. Kind of like a Festus and Felix thing. I sent him to the next jurisdiction. Let Herod deal with these people and Jesus, and I can just go on ahead about my life. I can go have some grapes, wine, and just chill out, because I really don't want to be bothered with this stuff that they're talking about anyway, because it doesn't make any sense to me. Okay. All right. We have some questions here that we would like to get to this evening, and there's 6 of them. So let's read the questions and we can dive in based on our involvement that has led us up to a room with Pilate. Jesus is now having an audience with the governor. Okay, first question. Were Pilate and the children of Israel on good terms with each other? What do you think? Remember, those of you who are not Bible students that are listening, they are being occupied by another nation. So that should give you some insight to the question and answer of question number one. Those of you who are Bible students understand that studying this, you know, and you can go into great detail of the relationship. All right, question number two. Were the accusations which the religious leaders made before Pilate in Luke 23:2 the same ones that they had made before the Sanhedrin? See Mark 14:58-65. If they are different, how are they different? Okay. All right, number three, the religious leaders accused Jesus of being opposed to paying taxes to Caesar, which is a no-no. Luke 23:2. But that's not the case with Jesus, as he told Peter to go over there and open up, to grab that fish and get my taxes and yours. But again, nobody wants to hear that. Nobody is defending that he did pay his taxes. Okay? When people have made up their mind that they don't like you, there's nothing you can say in your own defense. Okay, was Jesus opposed to paying taxes to Caesar? See Matthew 22:17-21. Jesus didn't come to tear the system down, because the system that is in place houses evildoers. It's kind of like you walk into a place and just start ripping things apart and cleaning things out and snatching and throwing it out in a truck and driving away. That's somebody's precious memories. You said, well, nobody told me not to do it. And then the other person would have the defense, nobody told you to. Okay. So it's not about the money, but they made it about the money. Number four, they also said that Jesus claimed to be Christ, a king. Is it true that Jesus claimed to be the Christ, one anointed to be king? See Matthew 26:63-64. Number five, why did Jesus' disciples not fight to keep him from falling into his enemies' hands? We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. What do you think? And you see that John 18:36. Now all the things that are happening now is the providence of God. And either way, how many Jews have gone up against Roman soldiers and been successful? There have been a lot of attacks and riots against the Roman government, and it came to nothing. It's just another thing to think about. And the final question is, do you think Pilate tried to make a fair decision regarding Jesus? See John 18:38. That's what judges are there for. That's when you bring something before a leadership. They righteously judge simply because of their experience and all the things they have heard throughout the years. Some things start sounding alike. This is very different. Okay? The charges that the Jews are making against Jesus are no ordinary charges. Criminality based on the thieves on the cross and Barabbas and stuff, that's a whole different arena. That falls under Jewish and Roman law. But we're talking about somebody who hasn't done anything, and you got to trump up charges. You got to find a lie to support what you're saying about him. And he's not defending himself. So that makes you, as a person that has the judges, is more and more inclined to look deeply into this man's eyes and his body movement and say, wait a minute, something is seriously wrong here. Because these are some charges that will get him put to death, crucified, or scourged in a manner that he wish he was dead. You know what I'm saying? So this is a nice little audience here we have here as Jesus is bounced around. and it's for the sins of the world. But Jesus have to take Pilate's mind off of the nonsense that the religious leaders are casting against Jesus. It's got to be about sin. It can't be about a kingdom and a king. It's got to be about sin, because that's why the Father sent him. That's why he's in the situation he's in now. That's why he's going to die on the cross, is for sin. And Jesus is trying to keep his audience zoned in on that. For those who are like Pilate, who do not know, do not care, and for those accusers who are going to be guilty of that, he has to keep that in the center of the room. He can't lose his focus on that, because that means his death would be in vain if he was dying for some other reason other than sin. And we can't lose that storyline either. That's what it's all about. It's about sin. And it doesn't matter who accuses you of what. Everybody except Jesus standing there is guilty of sin. So when Pilate simply asked about the truth, we're just saying, yo, well, what is truth? Like, I'm definitely not living my life based on truth. So what is truth? What is your definition of it? Because you make it seem like it's something that I don't know about. I know what truth is, but I don't understand how you putting it in a way that I don't understand. So what is truth? Kingdom, subjects, truth worth fighting for. What is that? I've been a governor a long time. I still don't understand what you're saying. Okay, let's go back to question 1. Let's jump into this. And let's get your perspective. Okay. All right. Question 1. Were Pilate and the children of Israel on good terms with each other? What do you think? Unmute yourself and jump right in. Were they buddies? They hang out together? They like showing up just because they like to talk to him? An indication that they didn't go in should help you answer this question. Sister Karen?
Hi, since no one is answering. Um, yeah, I don't think that they were friends. I don't think they got along. I think, and this is why this whole trial and crucifixion of Jesus didn't make any sense, because it's not like he was trying to help them, or he's trying to be on their side, or he's trying to make them like him, because they were literal, what do you call it, public enemies. They were definitely not friends. So, so that's why this whole thing was so hypocritical. So him trying to please them all of a sudden. I want to please you and do what you want all of a sudden. Like, where did that come from? And why all of a sudden you want to please us? So I guess they had a mutual issue with Jesus, because Jesus was different. They didn't like him. He was saying things that suggested that he knew God more than they did, or in a different way than they did, and that actually scared them. So they had to get rid of him. So they all had a mutual desire to get rid of Jesus, and that's why they gang up together, because they were mutual goal. Otherwise, from that, they were not.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at, like we're doing tonight, we're reading all 4 of the Gospels account, right? And it started in verse 1 and 2, and then it jumps down, to 11 through 18, and, finishes off with verses 29 and 31. But we find out that already before, this point, with Pilate tried to hand Jesus back to the Sanhedrin in John chapter 18. hearing the charges, we just read that, the four of you read that, of the chief priests and the elders. He said, won't you take him back and try him in your court? And they replied to him, no, we want the death sentence and we can't pass the death sentence. And we want you to try him. Okay, and he has caused an uproar in Galilee, and he's coming here to do the same thing. Okay. Well, Herod don't want to deal with him. You know what I'm saying? And we're going to find out that he sends him back to Pilate. Okay, so that they weren't on good terms, and they shouldn't be. They shouldn't be. That's like somebody coming into your country, taking your country and raising their flag, But again, the Sanhedrin was something that the Roman government tolerated. It benefited them. And Caiaphas benefited them. And second to Caesar himself under occupation, he was the next most important person in this story. You know what I'm saying? So just think about it that way. Okay, it's just that. They call him a king, and Pilate had to figure all this out. That's what Pilate was left to do. He trying to figure all this out. Okay. All right, question number 2. Were the accusations which the religious leaders made before Pilate the same ones they had made before the Sanhedrin? Did you guys look at both of those passages? Does anybody want to jump in on that? Remember, Jesus is not going back anywhere. This is a death sentence. It really is. There's no way he's going to get out of this. So things that were said about Jesus previously, Jesus in a situation right now where he is condemned. Okay. Pilate is very reluctant to deal with Jesus. He don't want to have nothing to do with him. Okay. Pilate goes back outside and you tell him, haven't found nothing wrong with him. Okay. And they definitely wasn't going inside his palace because they couldn't go back home and partake in the holiday. And Pilate don't care 2 cents about what they're talking about. And Pilate is looking for a political charge, a criminal charge. So he kind of figured, I'll bring Jesus in and I'll ask him a question myself. So the answer to question number 1 is nope, not on good terms. Question number 2, were the accusations which the religious leaders made before Pilate the same ones that they made before the Sanhedrin? I just want to read that for you again. Maybe you're already looking and flipping the pages to see what's going on with the 2 verses. If they are different, how are they different?
So in Mark, when Jesus is facing the Sanhedrins, it talks about the temple, destroying the temple and rebuilding it in 3 days. But he does say that he is the king, because they say, are you, well, not the king, they say, are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed? And Jesus says, I am. So in that regard, it's the same to me, meaning he is king, but the difference in the temple, he talked about destroying the temple and rebuilding it in 3 days.
Okay.
But again, Jesus used the same tactic of really, it's almost like not answering, like, why bother answering these people, right? Because of course he already knew they didn't know what they were asking or talking about. So he stood, again, here he stood silent. But when he says that, I am the Christ, the Son of God, he also goes further, which really got, I think, underneath the skin of the Sanhedrins when he talks about that you're going to see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of the power and coming with the clouds of heaven. I mean, at that point, the priests had it. They just really thought, this is, blasphemy. Like, how dare you? How dare you?
Yeah, you're right. So there's no coming back from that. It's just he's in a situation where he knows what's getting ready to happen. He has to keep it all in the center of the room, and they by no means are going to cut him any kind of slack, none at all. And they made up their mind that Jesus had to be off this planet in the grave long time ago. This is not just something they felt that they are going to conjure up in front of Pilate. They brought him there to be executed. They don't want to talk about nothing else. Brother Stanley?
Yeah, they made the accusation about the temple to the Sanhedrin. That was their religious counterparts, their religious peers, excuse me, because that accusation would mean something to them, right? That would be if a Jewish person said they would destroy the temple that was built to worship God, that would be punishable. If you bring that charge against the Romans, there's no law for that. That doesn't impact them, right? If a Jewish person say they're going to tear down a Jewish temple, why would Rome care? So they brought an accusation, which is similar to question 4, because Luke expounds on this. Question 3. They said, this guy said he's a king. Now that means something to the Romans, because the Romans are occupying. So that would mean that he is equal or greater than Caesar. And then Luke said he's causing division, which also would be a crime, because that would mean rioting and those sort of things would be a crime to Rome. And then he's forbidding people to pay taxes, which is also a crime. So they're picking the crimes that they're accusing Jesus of based off their audience, right? Religious crimes were what they were accusing him of last week. Those religious crimes this week have no bearings to Roman law. But saying you're a king, causing division, and forbidding people to pay taxes are all crimes to Rome. So they were strategic in what they were accusing him of last week's class versus this week.
Yeah. Thank you, both of you guys. It's apparent that there was a lot of wit going here. You know what I'm saying? You have to make this work. You have to make this work. This has to make sense to you. And you have to make this work because it doesn't take much. Like God said, I'm gonna harden Pharaoh's heart. Well, it doesn't take much when you got something to work with. And Lord knows for 3.5 years, they've given Jesus all the character playing that needed to be put in the storyline. They just don't even realize that they are volunteers. And now we just bring in a Gentile outside person into Jewish business, and Pilate don't think highly of him anyway. And plus, he's the boss. You know what I'm saying? I mean, okay, so what? It's no big deal to me. I have the power. You're right to judge this man, but if it doesn't have anything to do with my laws, I really don't think y'all laws make any sense anyway, and we just letting y'all have y'all little turf. But again, don't start a riot. And don't think you're going to be above Caesar. That's where we're going to shut that down. Okay? When you start talking about the money, then okay, that's going to get somebody to look up. They may be doing something else, and you start talking about taxes. Somebody's going to look up. You watch these commercials right now, they all talking about lowering taxes on gas, lowering taxes on the middle class, taxes. It always come down in the midterm and the president election. It always comes down to money. Always. All right, question number 4. They also said that Jesus claimed to be the Christ, a king. Is it true that Jesus claimed to be the Christ, one anointed to be king? Matthew 26:63 and 64. Brother Stanley alluded to this. Jesus kept silent, and the high priest answered and said to him, I put you under oath by the living God. Tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God. Jesus said to him, it is as you say. Nevertheless, I say to you, hereafter you will see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of power and coming on the clouds of heaven. They are going to see that. Everybody is going to see that. There it is. Look what he said. But see, Jesus's answer, what? Goes far beyond their accusations. And remember, you got Caiaphas don't believe in the afterlife. He's a Sadducee, so he don't believe in the afterlife. So that meant nothing to him. That comment meant anytime you start talking about seeing something from somewhere else, he doesn't believe in it. You dead, you died. So you got a mixed body of religious political people who are all claiming to come to the center and gain some sort of power and notoriety from a government that don't care. You're just a necessary evil. I have to make the appearance of you guys being in control and looking good. I'm going to use a very good military presence and laws to keep you under our foot. But the appearance of you guys having control, we tolerate that. We just put the right people in the right place. And we give you access to the money that we're getting, then you'll work right along with us. No matter what he says. No matter what, it doesn't make any difference at this point. They're only there for one thing, killing. There's no redemption here. There's no forgiveness here. There is no grace here. There's only one thing that Jesus has to do, and that's die. And they want to see it. They want to see it. They want to make sure that he is physically dead and that he does not come back. And with the Sadducees, he's dead, he's dead. And that's the way they feel. That's the way they're thinking. And that's what they want. They want that. Okay, let's move on. Why did Jesus' disciples not fight to keep him from falling into the enemy's hands? Well, we talked about that. John 18:36. This is a trial here. When you're before Pilate, there's really nothing else after that. Whatever he says goes. And by now, Jesus is in pretty bad shape. Okay. Jesus answered, my kingdom is not of this world. My kingdom were of this world. My servants will fight so that I should not be delivered to the Jews. But now my kingdom is not from here. Again, Jesus is controlling the narrative. These things must be done. These things must be done. And all the actors must stay in place and do their parts well. Satan is watching. He's watching to see how all of it unfolds. And he's listening to what the deity is saying on his turf, in his domain. And he's thinking that he got it made. He thinks that death will finalize the Hadean world for his power. And he stays in power. And it's not until he sees Jesus approaching him that he realized, oops, Genesis chapter 3. See? So everything hangs on the balance of obedience with the Son and the Father and the Holy Spirit. It all makes sense now. And Jesus is not going to let us as readers focus in on anything else. And he's doing an excellent job of keeping his audience guilty. Pilate is so uncertain about what he wants. He's very uncomfortable. He said, let me get him to Herod. Let me get him out of my court. I don't want this man before me. He's very nervous. And we'll talk a little bit about that next week. He's very nervous. He don't want to have anything to do with this because it doesn't make sense. And the Bible is leading us to believe that Herod just don't be killing people to be killing them. That's what I get out of it. I mean, by very nature of who he is and his power to do what he do, it shows that he is having some sort of, I won't use the word compassion toward Jesus, but I think he's looking at this in a very different way. He's definitely not looking at it the way, members of the Sanhedrin and Caiaphas and the crowd is. I mean, he's thinking it doesn't make sense and he's perplexed. He's perplexed to the point where he doesn't want to have anything to do with it. He doesn't want to run with the crowd. Now, he probably take pleasure in, executing criminals that comes before him. I'm sure he has all the hard cases, but when you got a guy that's not saying anything, man, and he's all beat up and everything, I mean, what more? Death may be a comfort for this person. So it's just something to think about. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I generally say that. I mean, when you think about what's going on right here in the story in front of you, you get to see how tough things are. Why didn't they not fight? Well, for what? At this stage of the game, he's going to be crucified. He done made it that far. How can it get let off? And the Jews ain't going anywhere until it happens. So fight now for who you're going to fight up against. You got fight up against Herod's guards, and then you got to fight the Romans. And that's just it ain't happening. And plus, in order to fight, you got to be around to fight. You find out when you get in trouble how many people are stand-up people. Just get in trouble. All right, our final question. Do you think Pilate tried to make a fair decision regarding Jesus? See John 18:38. Do you think that he tried? Sister Karen?
I don't think he tried. I
Okay.
think he was acting like he did. He was pretending that he was trying to please the people. He was pretending that he was trying to please the people, but I don't think he cared. I think he just wanted to wash his hands clean and basically have a clean conscience, basically. But I don't think it worked. But I think that's what he was trying to do. Yeah, but as I said, it was all hypocritical. So I don't think it worked, because I'm sure he thought about it for the rest of his life, right? That he actually allowed them to kill Jesus. So yeah, but I think he tried. He gave the impression that, as you said before, it was all about politics, right? It's all politics.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a broker. Who said he's trying to broker a deal here. And it's not working because his audience don't want to have anything to do with reasoning. So he is backed up against the wall because of the accusations that have been made concerning Jesus, and he has to judge. He got to do something. It is way too big now. It's out of control. And he got to do something, man. I mean, he just can't just stand there, and he cannot let Jesus go. And these people are not looking for a cell. They're not looking for you to ship him out somewhere to a rock farm or something. They looking for death. And he's in a brokering position. He's trying to find some sort of way to make it all make sense, but it is not going to work. Sister Karen, your hand's still up? No?
No, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not going to work. And I understand wholeheartedly, what's going on and how it's all playing out. But remember, Jesus is getting the raw end of the stick here physically for us. So just please don't lose sight of that. He's getting beat up, and it's an ugly scene. He's getting humiliated, and it's taking time. It's taking time to do this to Jesus, and you got to sit there and you got to hear this. All because they made the decision that they were going to die for the sins of the world. So this is ugly. This is tough. Okay, Sister Donna. Did you have your hand up, Sister Donna?
I did. I think Pilate was looking for a way out for Jesus. I mean, he asked Jesus so many times, why don't you answer? What have you done? Who are you? Many times. But he was also obligated to the people, right? And he says, I don't find fault in him. Like I don't, right? So I find no fault in him. If you guys want this, it's because it's what you want. But I've asked him, right? He's asked him repeatedly. And I mean, he says, do you want me to release you to to you, the King of the Jews. He's asking them in Mark 15:9. I think he attempted to. I don't think that he was just solely out to, the request comes to him to execute Jesus and he says yes. I don't think it was that simple, because he could have done it if it was that simple. I think that he did wrestle with it, and especially, the wife having the dream, and he's asking Jesus repeatedly, but Jesus really didn't give him much other than to say, it is as you say. All the more the crowd now is yelling. So Pilate had to do something, right? He could not not do anything because of the way the Roman government was set up. He had to the crowd wanted him to release Barabbas and send out Jesus. So he had to do something. I do think, though, that he made attempts to ask several times to see if he could get anything. And at the end, he said, I find no fault with them, but what do you want me to do? And then they want Barabbas. And then he's like, well, I'm done. I wash my hands. And then you guys, it's on you, not me.
Yeah, well, you're right. He's brokering the deal. Like I said, he's looking at he's in a bad situation. Pilate is really, it goes down in history where Pilate's name is mentioned more than Caiaphas' name at this scene, because Pilate is the one that's pushed up against the wall. When you read the story as a reader, you say, oh man, that whole thing was a lie. And then you look at Pilate as the bad guy. You know what I'm saying? There was no pardon here. Although he could have said, this makes no sense. Y'all leave my palace. He stays here. And he could have figured out some other way to get rid of Jesus by not having Jesus be executed. He had the power to do that. He definitely had the power to tell them to leave. You see what I'm saying? But again, he's in a situation where he has to do something because he has to keep order. These people would have flipped on him. He has to keep order. They would want to know where he is. What did you do with him? And then they will probably appeal to someone greater than him, and he can't have that. He can't have that. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, it's like, yeah, it makes sense to me that this dude is not guilty of this stuff. But again, he's in front of me, and I got to deal with these people. I got to deal with Caiaphas. If I don't do a fraction of what this man wants, he is very influential, and this band of buddies that he just brought into my court area, I mean, it can get bloody here. You know what I'm saying? Then I got the whole nation on my back because I killed their priests, their religious leaders. And man, I don't even want these people here. I don't want Jesus here. I want him to just disappear. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, that's the storyline. Next week we'll talk about, we're just getting into Jesus' next step, his next phase of all this. And that's Herod. And it's not going to be any different. Some people just want things to happen and they want it to, to just expedite it. Please, can somebody just go ahead and get this over with? So we not even get to the next case, but can we get some rest here? And that's the storyline. That's what he's going through right now. And he got to keep the whole world on his shoulder, and he got to make sure that it's directed, it's directed to sin, because sinners in the future is going to read this story. And they got to have the same impact. It's got to make sense. They got to see the agony in the garden. They got to see the scourging. They got to see that all that silence was because of the world and the worldwide sin. That's what makes sense. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for participating tonight, and your reading and comments were on point, and it was very helpful. And just like we had our 4 accounts, we was able to get our audience to respond and to give us some, individual outlooks to the story about Christ, his death, burial, and his resurrection. As we march into that, we can get to see how he was falsely charged and abused, unlawfully. Just he had nothing to do with this. He wasn't guilty of anything, but he had to bear the sins of the world. All right. Thanks again. Have a great evening. Praise and blessings. Brother Stanley will take us to the announcements.
All right, everyone, if you have any prayer requests, please add them in. As we go